When Land Rover set about designing the 5th generation Range Rover, they asked the owners of the old car what they wanted. And the message was clear: don't fundamentally change it. So, as you can see, they didn't. This new generation car looks pretty much the same as the L405 that went before it, except it's cleaner and simpler in design. The headlights are slimmer, but they've still got the signature Range Rover DRLs. The grille's a bit shallower too, but along this band here we've got all the sensors and the camera and the radar equipment, which moves it all off this area here, so the car no longer looks like it's covered in acne. And as you can see, the Don't Change It theme continues down the side as well. We have got bigger wheels now, so this car's on 22-inch wheels, but you can get up to 23-inch wheels on this car. It's cleaner down the sides. The gills are now flush fitting into the door, as are the handles as well. Down the side here, it's got much more sculpting at the bottom of the doors, and the sills just stick out a bit, and that gives the car quite a nice solid look, as do these curved top of the doors, which I think look really good, because also they minus now a weather strip at the bottom of the door there, so you don't have that strip coming across there. The top of the door just curves into the glass, which again gives it that cleanness that the designers were going for. Flush fitting glass all the way down the side obviously, but with the standard typically Range Rover floating roof design. However, it's around the back of the car that we get the most changes between this and the previous one. Look, it's dirty. It's actually been doing off-roading, sort of. It's been up a little path, but anyway, round here, as you can see, we've got much cleaner design in the old car. No lights on the corners like before. All the lights are integrated into Burt Reynolds moustache, which goes around the back there. So up here we've got the indicators and the reverse lights, sweeping indicators obviously. And down here we've got the tail lights and also the brake lights. And because everything's integrated behind this tinted panel, they are really high intensity LEDs, and they shine backwards so that the light is reflected out and beautifully diffused. Right, let's pop the boot. And we've got the if it ain't broke, don't fix it philosophy continuing, because we've still got the split tailgate. So, comes out like that. However, under here, we've got a seat, a backrest. So before you used to be able to sit on here, but now you can relax and lounge on here, take in the scenery, enjoy the peace and quiet and tranquility, or you can disturb it all by having speakers up here, which you can control from your iPhone and have all the music directed to the back of the car for a bit of a rave. Obviously, the Range Rover is now a massive car, over 5 meters long, but let me just show you something. It's very big in most respects in terms of interior. However, that's my driving position and they're my knees. On the plus side, I do have this. Which is the world's slowest moving folding out armrest. Remember to head over to pistonheads.com after watching this video to research and buy your next car. In fairness, when it comes to rear seat space, this is a short wheelbase car and I'm extremely lanky. And on the plus side, it's an autobiography with executive rear seating, and that means the rear seats are electrically adjustable as standard. And there are no space issues in the long wheelbase models, which are truly palatial in the back and even more luxurious. The latest Range Rover is also the first to have the option of 7 seats if you go for the long wheelbase model. And these seats are useful too, roomy enough for a couple of reasonably sized adults rather than just kids. It's all very well talking about the theory of how the new Range Rover is better and quieter and more economical and more slippery through the air than the old one. Did I mention that the drag coefficient is 0.30, which is meant to be the most aerodynamic of all the luxury SUVs according to Range Rover? But the theory is one thing and the driving is another. So, what is it actually like? Well, it is supremely quiet in here, superbly quiet. At 50 miles an hour, cruising along like this, there's very little road noise, even though this surface isn't exactly super smooth. And I was sitting in a traffic jam on the M25 earlier on, thinking, could barely hear the cars going down the other side of the carriageway, which is also remarkable really. And bearing in mind this doesn't even have the active noise cancelling system, which has something like 35 speakers spread around the car, including in the back of the headrest, to cancel out all the unwanted noise. That's pretty impressive. However, there is one criticism. I don't know if it's because the rest of the car is so good, but when you get to about 50 miles an hour, you do get some wind noise. And I don't know if you can hear that particularly because it's so quiet the rest of the time in terms of the rest of the car, but you do notice it's just fluttering away around by the door mirrors here. Then you get to 60 miles an hour and it gets a little bit worse, and at 70 it's like it just switches on properly, and it just spoils that last element of serenity for me, which is a real shame. Maybe that would be dealt with by the noise cancelling. I don't know, because I haven't driven a car with that fitted. As always, it's a Range Rover, so it has to be brilliant off-road. And this one's got maximum ground clearance of 295mm when the suspension's raised fully, and it will wade through 900mm of water. Now, few people ever deviate onto the dirt, but we did. We tackled huge boulders and vast expanses of open sand. Well, actually some pebbles on a dusty track. Maybe not the ultimate test then, but it was at least an opportunity to try out some of the off-road modes and the brilliant visibility offered by the multitude of cameras that show you what you can't see from the driver's seat, including directly underneath the car. By the way, if you like a good anorak fact, I've got one for you. There are 125 registered patents for this new Range Rover, and that's the most for any JLR product to date. This Ingenium engine, the straight 6 3 litre, is absolutely fantastic. It is one of the best diesel engines on the market. Fact. I include in that BMWs, straight 6s, and even the latest Mercedes ones. It is right up there with the best of them. And it feels like such a shame when you're talking about an engine like this that we were told 20 years ago that diesel was brilliant, even though we knew that back then they were dirty and noisy and not particularly brilliant. And then 20 years later, after all the refining that's gone on, we've got to a point now where they are so good, really efficient, really clean, even compared to the latest petrol engines. But we're not allowed to talk about that because diesel has become an evil, dirty word, and it should be banned according to all politicians. But this thing is the perfect engine for this car. For a start, as I say, beautifully smooth and refined. Put your foot down and you really wouldn't think that this is a diesel. I know you hear that many, many times, but the thing is, it's true. It sounds just like a good quality straight 6 petrol. It's that good. And now this is the reason why diesel shouldn't be buried yet, because I happened to look down at the trip computer just as I was coming up to location, and bearing in mind I'd done about 80 miles at that point through town, a big stint on the motorway, and then these country roads flowing along. Look down, 40 mpg. 40 mpg! 2.5 ton car, looks like a bit unfair, it doesn't really look like a brick, but you know what I mean. A big car, not some MPG test vehicle. 40 mpg with a 350 horsepower diesel. I think that's really impressive, especially because I wasn't trying to drive economically, and it makes me wonder if one of those 125 registered patents isn't actually perpetual motion. There are loads of engine options, and the horsepower you get with them is in the name. The D300 and the D350, which is what we have here, are both straight 6 mild hybrid diesels. And then there are 2 petrols, the P400, which again is a straight 6, as well as the P550, which is essentially BMW's 4.4 litre twin turbo V8, and that will hit 0 to 60 in 4.6 seconds. There are also 2 PHEVs, the P440e and the P510e. Now they both use 6-cylinder petrols as well, but twin with a 143 horsepower electric motor and powered by a 40 kilowatt hour battery that gives an electric only range of 70 miles. They also charge at up to 50 kilowatts. The 8-speed ZF Auto also works seamlessly with the engine, flicking through the gears really nicely. The only thing is there is a little bit of transmission shunt at low speeds in stop-start traffic. Otherwise though, another area that's ticked off really well in this car. And then there's the ride. Now this is a little bit of a double-edged sword because certain things like sharp intrusions do cause a bit of a twang through the body, something you can hear but also feel as well as a bit of a punch through the seats. It's a little bit outside what you consider the perfect luxury ride, but long wave stuff, the kind of thing that we're experiencing on these A and B roads, is beautifully dealt with. It's very wafty, but it's also propped up really well by that 48 volt anti-roll bar system, because you'd expect a tall, heavy car like this to be swaying around all over the place on its soft suspension, but it isn't. It feels nice and stable with a good dose of Waftomatic in there too. Underpinning this new Range Rover is an all-new chassis, and it's called MLA Flex. It's a mixture of riveted and bonded aluminium with cast aluminium for the rear subframe and boron steel used in the firewall. It's said to be 50% torsionally stiffer than the old one, and it reduces MVH by up to a quarter. There's rear wheel steering, which can turn the rear wheels by up to 7 degrees, and that means the Range Rover can perform a U-turn in under 11 metres, which is about the same as a Volkswagen Golf. The driving position is excellent, and look, you even get some chunky buttons to control the heating system. That's great, as are the digital instrument screen and this floating 13.1 inch infotainment screen. These are both super high res, although it must be said the menus are a little bit complex. The seats are also extremely comfortable. These ones have 24-way adjustment and more massage options than the Kingdom of Thailand. Up here you've also got the usual commanding Range Rover driving position, which puts you well above the eye level of most vans. The interior also feels very luxurious, and in the main it's well built. That said, I wouldn't say this Autobiography is quite at Bentley levels of fit and finish. The leather's a little bit plasticky, and instead of real metal trims there's lots of chromed plastic. The SV models, however, are a lot plusher. It's a challenging thing to set up a car like this because there's a very fine line between isolation and involvement, and I'd say this Range Rover walks it just about perfectly. The handling is absolutely spot on for a car like this, a car that you want to feel detached and isolated from the road, but you don't want to feel so unconnected that it becomes difficult to drive, because ultimately if you're trying to relax, having a car that's got disconnected steering and particularly soft brake pedal doesn't really work very well, doesn't make it relaxing. This just gets everything right. So the brake pedal, yes, it's got a lovely progressive feel that means you can stop gracefully at every opportunity. The steering, there's no real sensation coming up through the column, but that's good. It's isolating you from the road surface, but what it does do, it's nicely connected around the straight ahead, so that as soon as you start turning into bends, you know where you are and you can place the car very easily. The rear wheel steering obviously is helping in town because it means that tight turning circle makes the car very easy to switch around. And then in terms of the roll, we've got some series of bends here, and if I just throw it in like that, 60 miles an hour around there, very little roll. I mean, it does roll, but it's not rolling alarmingly, and you can carry good speed in the car. Right then, where do we begin summing up the new Range Rover? Well, in this form at least, as a short wheelbase Autobiography, I'd still say it's some way off the Bentayga levels of hyper luxury. But look, the range starts from £99,000, so it's also considerably cheaper than the Bentley. And I like the fact that the Range Rover isn't trying to be too sporty. It's still designed to be soft and serene, but now that subtle technology underneath also makes it more wieldy than ever. I also think this D350 engine is fabulous, the perfect accompaniment to a large off-roading SUV. And then there's the looks. I mean, come on, surely everyone's got to agree this is the most beautiful of all the luxury SUVs. It's refreshingly restrained and minimalist inside and out, but it still looks immediately like a Range Rover when you see one flash by. So it might not be the ultimate for pure luxury, but as a luxury off-roader, it's still one of the most compelling packages there is. If you've enjoyed watching this PistonHeads video, then don't forget to give it a like, and also don't forget to subscribe to the channel for all the latest content. Also, let us know what you think of the new Range Rover with a thumbs up or a thumbs down or a comment below.